Hey, Little Spoon Kitchen. Today we are going to be making some Snickerdoodle cookies just in time for Christmas. However, there's some fun things about them. I do not use cream of tartar in my Snickerdoodle cookies. I instead use buttermilk powder. And then I also use something called toasted milk powder, which gives these Snickerdoodle cookies a really wonderful brown butter flavor without having to go through the process of melting and browning butter and then getting it cool enough in the refrigerator and getting it all mixed in and all that kind of stuff. And I will make sure that I touch point on all of that information as I am working on making some of the toasted milk powder. It is kind of one of my favorite things. It's something that I have in a lot of my recipes online, just because it's so much easier than making brown butter all the time. Let's see, anything else that I want to add before we get started? I don't think so. So first things first, we're going to start with some whole milk powder. These cook-alongs have absolutely nothing measured. Nothing is done. Everything is started from scratch the whole way through so that I can give you all of the tips, tricks as I make things, and we can kind of go through the whole process together. That does mean that I am slower than you are going to be. So there may be times where you're like, oh my gosh, she's just talking. But I promise I'm giving you good information, and I'm trying my best to make sure that the people who find this video at a later date and are not currently with me live can kind of get the same information and get everything that they need to then be successful at making this recipe at home. For those of you who are seeing this at a later date, please do know that I have a chat here and I'm going to be talking to them. They're going to ask me questions. I'm going to be answering those. I'm going to be just saying things out loud. Hopefully, if you find this later, I've answered all of the questions that may come up. If not, there's obviously always a comment section in the bottom of the video on YouTube where you can say, hey, have a question. And then I will get the notification and I will do my best to answer in a timely manner. So we're going to get started. The first thing that we are going to do is we are going to make some toasted milk powder. I today am only going to make what is necessary for the recipe. I do recommend, and I was saying this earlier, that you make a pretty big batch of toasted milk powder at one go so that you can then use it in any recipe going forward. You don't have to make it every time the same way that you would have to say make brown butter every time. I think if you make brown butter, meaning melting it, toasting the milk solids that are in the butter, and then cooling it and kind of using it, you can only have it in your refrigerator. I want to say it's 2 weeks before it will go bad because there is dairy that is not dehydrated. And so it kind of can get funky in your refrigerator. It'll take on smells and other flavors and stuff from the other food in your refrigerator. So you really have kind of a shortened period of time with which you can make a big batch of brown butter and then use it. And then you also kind of have to figure out how to have all of those toasted milk solids that are in brown butter be on a flat surface so that you have enough of it and you don't have less in one batch than another batch. That can be kind of weird too. But yeah, if you just make this product, which we are about to make right now, it's shelf stable. You basically are toasting the milk powder here, and then you can just put it into a container that goes as long as the date on the packaging for the milk powder goes. So whenever this says best by date, and even a best by date is not an actual expiration date. If it has an expiration date, sure, use that. If it has a best by date, you can probably go even a little longer. But they're essentially the same product. This is just heated. So the best by date will be essentially the same. So this recipe uses a 1/4 cup or 25 grams of toasted milk powder. So I am going to just weigh that out real quick in a bowl and then pour it into my saute pan here. I do prefer using stainless steel for toasted milk powder. It collects less. It's easier for me to scrape the bottom without worrying about Teflon or any of that kind of nonstick stuff. And then I do find that with carbon steel or cast iron, that if it's not really well seasoned, it does kind of stick sometimes. So stainless steel is really kind of my favorite because you can really, if it does start sticking, it shouldn't be too bad. But if it does start really sticking, you can take it off the heat and like really give it a scrape without worrying about the bottom of the pan. So that's kind of my pouring toasted milk powder, pre-made milk powder right into my bowl. Let's get a spoon. Okay. Really not that much. Because this has such a long shelf life, like I said, I do really recommend making a much bigger batch than this. Doing something like, a cup and a half, or even like 2 cups. So, 360 to 480 milliliters by volume. Like, I do suggest making about that much. Most of the recipes that I have on my website are anywhere between 2 tablespoons, so about 30 milliliters by volume, all the way up to a 1/4 cup, which is 60. So if you make a really big batch, then you kind of don't have to keep remaking it. But yeah, so essentially the way that this goes, is these are the milk solids that get toasted in butter. So if I were to put an entire stick of butter and make melted butter right now, I'm getting about a half of a tablespoon, 7.5 milliliters by volume, of toasted milk solids. That is as much as I can get out of an entire stick of butter. So in order to get more, I have to use more butter. Well, recipes don't need more butter. So instead, we're going to take just the milk solids. We're going to dry toast just the milk solids. And then we can have more brown butter flavor without even needing to mess around with the butter, which in my opinion is awesome. So that's what we're currently doing. What are we doing here? There you go. You're going to put this on medium, low. For anybody who is cooking with me today, it may take you longer to toast your milk powder than it will for me to toast my milk powder because I have so much less milk powder in my pan. For obvious reasons, the more milk powder you have, the more crowded the pan is, the more heat disperses, the longer it takes to make it. But in all honesty, it's probably for the best because, like I said, I'm a chat and it's going to take me a little bit longer to kind of get through some of the other stuff. So you can probably catch up with me pretty easy. But you can see this color that it started. I guess, is the camera on, honey, the overhead? Just making sure. Because I have no idea what I'm looking at. I can't see anything. It is? Okay. So I've got our overhead camera here. You can see how light this is. You do not need to, this is typically the color that I toast my milk powder to, my powdered milk to. You do not need to toast it that dark. Just know the darker that the powdered milk gets while you're toasting it, the more brown butter flavor you're going to get, more caramelized flavor you're going to get. We are not actually caramelizing anything. Much like with blonde chocolate. So when you take white chocolate and you toast it in the oven and it turns a really beautiful kind of tan color, it's doing the same thing, right? Is where we're messing around by toasting it, but we're not caramelizing it. If we're going to caramelize it, it will burn and melt, and we don't want that. So you're getting in between 200 degrees and 300 degrees. I apologize. I do not know what that is in Celsius. If anybody wants to throw that in. Is my hair being a problem? I knew I should have put it up. Sorry. We're getting some static on the line. If anybody has a problem hearing me, just let me know and I will repeat what I needed to say. I also don't know where I was saying before that, so I guess I can't repeat it because I've already lost focus on it. But yeah, we obviously don't want it to burn. But we're going for an in-between kind of temperature. We don't want it to get too hot but we want it to be hot enough that it toasts and browns. So we're like getting to Maillard reaction, but we're not caramelizing, if that's helpful to anybody. And this is kind of one of those things that like it takes a little bit for it to get going. But once the color starts, you'll see it just increasingly get darker and darker and darker until you hit the color that you want. So like I can see a couple of pieces in here that are starting to darken. It is easier to keep this at a medium-low temperature if you're nervous about burning anything, because it will, like once it gets, if anything gets caught to the bottom, especially if you're doing like a really big batch of this, it can be kind of hard to make sure that you're not browning too quickly. I don't know if you guys can see some of the color, so it's changing a little bit. I feel like I should have a little cup of what, like I should keep the other powder all the way over here that's untoasted, so you can see how like much color we already have in here, because it already is turning a nice kind of manila folder shade from the cream that we had before. It's the induction cooktop? Okay, well, it is what it is. I want to face the camera. If I use, first of all, I don't like the electric cooktop behind me. I don't like electric cooktops in general. I think they're just really poor at like heating and having any kind of like ability to manipulate heat correctly and with precision. So like, I'm just gonna stay here. Yep, a cooking stream. You'll notice, for those of you who are making this with me right now, you'll notice that sometimes you'll get little clumps and pieces that it, like when you scrape up off the bottom, you'll get like a kind of a long or larger kind of clump because it's kind of cooked together a little bit on the bottom. That's okay. What you're gonna do is you're gonna kind of give it a little kind of pat to break up those clumps. You can also kind of go like this and press it to break up those clumps. I prefer doing something like this that moves because it also scrapes the bottom of the pan a little bit. But you guys can see like how different that color already is. Small amounts go so much faster just because there's so much surface area touching the bottom of the pan than doing like a big batch, but in the long run, doing a little bit of a bulk amount will make it easier on you, because then you don't need to do this over and over again. You can, as you're cooking, you can let it sit a little bit, especially if you're on a lower temperature. You can let it sit just a little bit so it does brown instead of just constantly stirring and constantly moving. But you do have to be careful and keep an eye on it, because like I said, once it starts getting color, it hit that temperature where like it will just start toasting really fast. I've probably got a little less than 5 minutes left on this for me. So you can see that like a small batch probably takes about 15 minutes, give or take. If you were doing a large batch, it could take up to an hour. but you're making like 8 times as much as what's in this pan, so it's worth it. How is everybody who's cooking with me doing? Do we have any questions? Are we doing okay? I know that if you don't feel like you can step away from your from your pan to answer a question, that is a-okay. This is almost the color I want it to be. When are we making mashed potatoes? We made mashed potatoes in our last cooking stream. Or was it the last one? Yeah, I think it was the last one. There's already a video online for that on YouTube. Taking a while, you're making about 2 cups worth? Yeah. That's what I did yesterday. I was running out and I was like, you know what? I know I'm going to be doing this for stream, but I don't want to be there longer than absolutely necessary because I feel like people will get bored just watching me do this for an hour. Although it is kind of satisfying. Okay, I think I'm pretty happy with this color. So if you recall where it started, this is where I tend to like. You could go a little bit darker brown than this, but I think that this is a really good, just happy medium. This is where I like to end. Some people like to toast less than this. Really up to you. Any amount of toasting will give you more flavor. Okay, so we're gonna set that off to the side. I'm gonna turn this guy off and move him because we do not need him anymore. I set my pan down on a cold countertop hoping that it would stop some of the cooking, but I do need to actually keep moving that around because the pan bottom is still hot. I do need this to cool as well before I can use it, or at least cool enough that it won't like melt the butter while you're trying to cream the butter and the sugar together. So I am going to probably keep moving this around my counter and letting this, actually what I probably will do is put this on a plate and then move it around the countertop. Oh wait, we got rid of our plates. Move it to a cold plate. You could put it in your refrigerator, like pour out, like if you make a really big batch, pour out what you need for the recipe and like stick it in the fridge or the freezer. Really, it'll cool down super fast as long as it's like thinly spread out and on something that's relatively cool. I'm gonna have to bang on this to get this out. No. I don't want to make a lot of noise. Huh? Nah, it's okay. I'll use a... Do I have a... I don't think I do. I was going to say if I had a pastry brush, I could just brush it off, but I don't have one down here. We're just going to use a napkin. Whoops. Okay. There we go. Look, it's a clean pan. Not really. Kind of. Okay. I'm going to just set that aside to cool. I'm going to spread it out as best I can so that it'll cool faster. The more surface area, again, the same way that like the more surface area you have while you're toasting, the faster it happens. The more surface area you have on a cold surface when you're chilling, the faster it will chill. So kind of the same concept, but you know. So we got that spread out there. Now we're gonna start messing around with our dough and measuring out all of our stuff, all of our ingredients. Set this one aside. Go. Okay. Let's check to see, do we have any questions? No questions so far. Looks like we're just talking about food. Cool. Okay. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to pour all of my dry ingredients into a bowl to get it prepped. So we'll have our dry ingredients prepped, some of our wet ingredients kind of prepped and ready to go, and then we'll kind of, get all of our wet ingredients mixed up and then pour our dry in. It is a cookie. We're all doing the basic cookie with just a couple of extra ingredients that are not so basic, right? Okay, so I'm gonna need 2 cups or about 255 grams of all-purpose flour. I am not going to measure most of my ingredients out using cups and spoons and things like that. I'm using imperial measurements. I'm going to say them out loud, but for me, it's easier, especially with dry ingredients, to just measure everything with grams on a scale. So I don't have to do anything extra to get the proper amount of ingredients. If you are looking to have more consistency, especially in baking, I highly, highly recommend you get a kitchen scale and do everything by grams. It is the most consistent, even your liquids by grams. It is the most consistent way to have your stuff end up the same every time. Consistency, right? If you do not have a kitchen scale, we'll do this right now. I'm going to quickly show you how you need to be measuring your flour. There is a specific way that you need to do this. Where is the back of the knife? Okay. So, if you are measuring flour when you are baking, it is not scooping directly into the flour and then kind of taking off, leveling it out and then dumping it. When you scoop, you compact the flour. The flour needs to be aerated. Nobody says this. It's like a common thing in baking that everybody does, but doesn't explain to anybody who doesn't usually bake. So I'm explaining to you now. So what you're going to do is you're going to take a separate scoop. This is an old scoop that I've had for forever that doesn't match any of the things in my kitchen. I just leave it in here at all times. You take a scoop and you're going to kind of just move your flour around, get it a little aerated. You're going to pick it up and then you're going to kind of just do this and gently sprinkle it in to whatever vessel you are measuring with. Okay, so this is specifically for our imperial people who are doing cups, spoons, teaspoons, all that kind of stuff. Okay. This is a cup of flour. Okay. This is going to be, if you do it this way, you are probably going to end up somewhere between 125 and 138 grams of flour. If I were going to do this, let's see what we got here. Because I already weighed that out. I've got 122, so a little bit less. And I also spilled some on my counter, so that's probably why. I usually end up with about 125 grams when I do that. If I were going to, let's go back. Again, this is what I mean when I say, like, you guys will catch up to me if you're cooking with me because I do stuff like this. So if I were to scoop directly in, even if I say fluff, like I aerated my flour a little bit and it's not fully compact, right? So I scoop in, this feels so much heavier. I'm going to level this off. Okay, let's see what we have now. Here, that's a better one. This is 145.8 grams. So I've just increased by like a quarter cup how much flour I have. And that is why if you've experienced in your baking journey that a lot of your cookies, breads, like quick breads, like muffins and things like that come out really dense and you're like, why is it so dense? Why is it so dry? It's because you have too much flour in your recipe. And it's probably because nobody has said like, hey, this is how you're supposed to kind of scoop and then level instead of scooping directly into the flour. You kind of scoop, pour, and then level off. So hopefully that's helpful. If you don't have a kitchen scale, like I said, I highly recommend that you get one. If not, just use that technique until you can get one and use it. It will help your cooking or your baking tremendously. Is there a special sifter you're supposed to use for flour? No. No. But if you do, if a recipe specifically says that you need to sift something, please do sift it. Don't think that this negates sifting. There are some, no, like it doesn't negate sifting. So like even if I came across a recipe that said X grams of flour sifted, then I would take this and I would sift this, because the point is to break up clumps if they're asking for sifting. Typically that's done in something like macarons, right? So you have almond flour and you have to sift out the larger pieces of almond flour. So you're using just the smaller ones and it gives you a better texture in your cookies. And so that, like, if you see sift, it's for that reason. It's not to aerate your flour. It's more to break up clumps and make sure that they're not, like, you're not getting like bigger weird textures or something like that in your cookies or in your baked goods. Okay, so that's our flour. Next, we're gonna do a teaspoon of baking soda. I am not gonna do a teaspoon of baking soda. It's about 5.5 grams of baking soda. I'm actually gonna do less than that. My baking soda is probably about 4.8 grams and not 5.5 because I'm at a higher elevation. So I have to lower my leavening agents by about 25 to 30%. I'm not at a super high elevation. Sometimes it's like half. So if you're over like 6,000 feet, then you would like have your leaveners. For me, I'm at 4,800 feet. So I found that like 25 to 30% is like a happy place for me with my leaveners. So for those of you who are roughly around sea level or anything under like 2,000 feet from sea level, whatever that is, again, apologies in the metric system. Then you're probably good with the recipe as written. But if you are at a higher elevation, you're gonna want to lower your leavening agents down just a touch. Okay, so I want to do, what did I say? I wanted to do 4.8 grams for me, 5.5 grams for anybody who is making this elsewhere, or you can do a teaspoon. That works as well. I want to say, was it 4.8 or 3.8? I need to do the math here. I forget what I used yesterday. It worked really well. I've pre-baked these. I don't have an oven down here, which I don't know why, but I didn't realize it. So I had to pre-bake the cookies yesterday, or this morning, I guess. Okay, 5.5 times 0.7, 3.85. Okay, I was right. 3.85. Did a little bit more than I wanted to. That's good. Okay, cool. So got our baking soda. Baking soda specifically works with acid. There is quite, I know it doesn't seem like there's a lot of acid in this recipe, but there actually is. So typically, if you see baking soda in a recipe, you're gonna see something like lemon, or you're gonna see like orange juices, like anything kind of citrusy, right? Or you're going to, I'm trying to think of what else you might see if you're using baking soda. It's usually like some kind of citrus, right? If there's not, a lot of times people will go into a baking powder. Baking powder is useful in situations where you don't have any kind of acidic ingredients, because what it does is it's kind of double acting. Most baking powders are double acting, and they'll react with your acids that are in your recipe, but then they also react with heat. So like there's a secondary reaction because baking powder has cream of tartar, go figure, has cream of tartar and it has baking soda in it. And so you have an acid, you have tartaric acid, which is cream of tartar. And then you have, well, it's a partially neutralized tartaric acid. And then you also have your baking soda. And then when those heat up and melt with the liquids in your ingredients and come together, they will create a secondary rise that you may not have that first rise because you don't have a lot of acidic ingredients, but it will happen while it is baking and when it hits heat. This recipe, I know it doesn't seem like it has acidic ingredients, but it actually does. Remember that we have our buttermilk powder, which is going to be acidic. And then we also have brown sugar, which is also acidic. Molasses is acidic. So even though it's not like lemon acidic, it is going to create enough leavening that you are going to get a little bit of that like kind of like poof and like rounded corners on your cookies, and they won't just like spread out super flat. Okay, so yeah, and I prefer, we'll talk about this real quick since this is what we're gonna measure out right now. We need a tablespoon of buttermilk powder. It's about 9 grams. I prefer to use buttermilk powder in this over cream of tartar. Cream of tartar, usually you'll see 1 to 2 teaspoons. So like somewhere between 3 and 6 grams of cream of tartar in a Snickerdoodle cookie recipe, in an actual Snickerdoodle cookie recipe. I get so mad with people who just make sugar cookies and then roll them in cinnamon and sugar. That is not a Snickerdoodle, that is a sugar cookie. Cream of tartar is what makes a Snickerdoodle. But I hate cream of tartar because I think that the tartaric acid that makes up cream of tartar has like a metallic, like a really sharp, lemony, metallic taste to it that just like is pervasive through the whole cookie. Like I don't like it. And so I started messing around with, okay, well, what else will give me something that is acidic enough that it will react with our leavening agent, but it's also tangy and tart enough that it makes it not a sugar cookie. Like, how do I make this interesting, right? And so this is kind of what I came up with is the buttermilk powder, and it works really well. Like it gives it a nice tang, but it is weaker than a cream of tartar. Cream of tartar is super sharp. It's very strong. So where you may be using, 3 grams of a cream of tartar, like 3 or 4 or 5, something like that, this is going to need 9 in order to kind of get it to the point where you can taste it and you get a bit of that tang. But I like that it's not metallic. Like I like that you get tang without it being tart or metallic. So that's why I ended up with this. And I think that it's good. So, okay. We're gonna do 9 grams. Let's turn this back on. I talked too much. My scale turned off. Okay. Close. Okay. So now we've got our buttermilk powder, and now we're also going to add in our toasted milk powder, which is nice and cool. This whole thing is gonna go in. I'm gonna kind of just like give it a little bit of a shake situation. I don't want it coming off of the plate and missing the sides of the bowl. So this has already been measured out. We're just gonna toss that right in. Okay, and then the last thing that we're gonna add is some cornstarch. So the cornstarch, aside from the buttermilk powder also does other things. So anytime you add milk powder in general, so especially the whole milk powder, you're adding protein into whatever you're going to be making, and then you're also adding in a little extra fat. Now, obviously, if you're doing like a non-fat milk powder, you're not gonna have the extra fat, the added fat. that you would if you were using a whole milk powder. I prefer using a whole milk powder. I like to have the extra fat. It helps maintain moisture in baked goods for longer. So they'll last an extra day or two before they dry out. And so I actually prefer that. I think that it hydrates better. It stays hydrated longer. And so I prefer to use a whole milk powder, but you do not have to if you do not want to. But the protein also adds to structure. It lets things kind of puff up, but stay slightly dense, right? Because you're allowing for that hydration. But it also gives just like a denser and like better quality to your baked goods. That's kind of like the way that I am, like what I prefer. The buttermilk powder also does that because it's casein and whey. So you're getting protein in your casein and you're getting a little bit of the fat in the whey. And that will also kind of help with that same moisture retention and help with the cookie structure. It gives it a little bit of like a dense chewiness that you would otherwise not have without them. So it's just a little bit denser, a little bit more chewy, and a little bit more like of a moist kind of cookie, which is what I prefer. So you can bake it all the way through and still maintain that texture. Whereas with a lot of people, when they bake cookies, they'll like underbake them a little bit to keep that chewiness in the center. You don't need to do it when you've got some whole milk powder, when you've got the buttermilk, and then also when you have the cornstarch. The cornstarch is another kind of part of that for the chewiness and the denseness of the cookie. That this is kind of like that third piece of the puzzle to get that kind of chewy texture. Okay, so now I'm going to need a 1/4 cup or 32.5 grams of cornstarch. Again, I am not going to be using actual spoons, measuring spoons or cups. I'm just going to go in here and pour it in with a spoon and watch my scale. 32.5. Good. Okay. All right, how are my milk powder people doing if you were making a big batch? How are you feeling? Are you feeling like you're good? Do I need to slow down at all for anybody who's cooking with me? How are we doing? I'm just going to mix this. We're just going to mix this. These are our dry ingredients. Oh, sorry. My bad. So now I'm just mixing my ingredients that are in here so that when I add them, they don't add into my wet ingredients ununiformly, and then we have like an odd amount of leavening in some of the cookies and not in others. So we're just going to make sure that we are incorporating until it looks uniform. Everything gets added evenly. You should always be doing this with your dry ingredients. If there are multiple ingredients in your dry ingredients, you should always be whisking to incorporate before they get added to your wet ingredients. It smells really good in here right now too. Almost done doing a lighter batch since it takes a little long. Sorry. What you might be able to do is just take some out of your pan. And then cook the rest later. Just be like, screw it. Hey, JD. I'm going to set my dry ingredients off to the side. And we're going to start talking about some of our wet ingredients. The first one being butter. You need 3/4 cup or 170 grams of butter. I'm going to use my plate again. I'm just going to do this. Almost done. Oh, wait, doing a lighter batch since it's taking so long. Okay. Cool. Okay, I'm supposed to do 170 grams. A stick of butter in the US, we get these like little kind of 1/2 cup sticks. This will be about 113 to 113.5 grams, depending on how much of it comes off on the paper here, which looks like it's quite a bit. Let's get that down. I do prefer to use European style butter for pretty much all of my baked goods. It's not, I don't think that it's absolutely necessary in this. They just end up being like a richer cookie in general. I don't think it's super necessary for these cookies. It's just the butters that I prefer. I also do prefer using unsalted butters and then making sure, and then like being able to salt according to my tastes in recipes instead of using salted butter and then having to like adjust based on that. Unfortunately, here in Colorado, I can't buy unsalted butter in bulk. European style butter unsalted in bulk. It's kind of frustrating. So that one was unsalted, but this guy is not. So my Kerrygold butter is salted. But that's okay. Okay, so I need 170 grams. This recipe is written with, I made it with unsalted butter. So if you do use salted butter, I would lessen the amount of salt because there is quite a bit of salt in this. I think I have like half a tablespoon. There's like, let's see. Yeah, I've got 5 grams of salt in here. Come on. Honestly, I should have just, I don't know why I used a plate. You know, would have been better if I had just put the base of the mixer right on the scale. Oh well. We're gonna compensate. I'm gonna overcompensate and add just a touch more butter because I know something's gonna get stuck to the plate. So this is not what I would consider the best temperature for butter that I currently have. This is closer to room temperature butter. It's better to have softened butter. So the difference between room temperature butter and softened butter, especially when you're going to cream sugar, like you're just going to get an overall better texture and structure to your cookies if you're using the correct temperature of butter. If the butter is like immediately spreadable, right? So if you had an uncooked piece of bread, like sandwich bread, like soft bread, and you could spread it without it like pulling up the bread, that's too soft. You should not be able to kind of just like, your finger should just not kind of fall through the butter. You should press and it should indent without like a lot of force. So essentially, let's see if I can think about it. If you have like Play-Doh and you like press into it, that's a pretty good texture for a softened butter. But like this is probably closer to room temperature. So I'm gonna have to be careful with this batch of cookies. Violence is sometimes the answer. Somebody said they put their butter into a Ziploc bag, close it, and beat the crap out of it with a rolling pin, and then they cut the bag open and scrape it out. That is an option. That's a better option, honestly, for like if you were making croissants and you needed to have your like square of butter so that you could shape it and get it into the correct temperature. I recommend a couple of different things. One is you can just take the butter out a couple hours, an hour or so beforehand, and it usually gets to the proper temperature. If you have less time, maybe 15, 20 minutes, you can just cut the butter into pats of butter into like smaller shapes and like spread them out on a plate, and they will come to room temperature because, again, more surface area means that they are going to come closer to the temperature that they are touching faster. So that would be good. And then another option is to, I like to do this. I don't know if I have anything down here that would work. If you get like a mason jar or a cup, like a glass cup of some kind, and fill it with hot water, and then let it sit for a few minutes, put the stick of butter onto your counter, and then put the glass or a bowl or whatever it is over the top of it. The ambient temperature will help make that butter, but without melting it, it will help to get that butter softened faster. So that's kind of another thing that I tend to do. I've seen people You're talking about thinking ahead. How does that work? That's funny. There's somebody out there. What's her name? It's Sarah something. There are a couple of people that are out there that are bakers and like content creators that will literally put a stick of butter like that's cold out of the fridge like against their skin. Like they'll tuck it into like their pants and just walk around with it until it's chilled. But like, that seems a little unsanitary to me. I guess I'm cooking for myself. But like my worry, I guess, is that I'd forget about it and like it would start to come out of the top or the bottom because like it's just folded paper, like wax paper. It's not anything more than that. And then like that it would, because like some of it's touching your skin and some of it's not, that it would like heat unevenly. So like, I don't know, some people swear by it. They swear by it, but like that's not anything that I've ever done. Something that does seem like it might work better is to grate butter. So if you take it right out of the fridge and grate it with a cheese grater into really small pieces and just let it sit on your like on the countertop for like 5 minutes and then toss it in, that's probably a really good way to do that as well. So yeah. A stick of butter in your pants. Exactly. Okay. So essentially what I'm doing is I'm just getting the butter. Let's show you guys. This is actually good, and I didn't weigh or measure out any of my sugar before I started. Bad Carrie. A grater or peeler. Yeah. So basically what I'm trying to do is I've taken my butter. I don't know if you can see the color difference here. So I've taken my butter and I've kind of whipped it around with my beater attachment on my stand mixer until it looks almost like an icing or a frosting. And it's kind of lightened a little bit and taken on a little bit more volume. Like that's kind of where you want to go. And then we're going to start adding our sugar in. Okay, I need a half cup of each of unrefined granulated sugar. So like sugar in the raw. And I use a dark brown sugar. You could probably use a light brown sugar, but the dark brown sugar, again, I had said that molasses has a lower pH, which means it's more acidic and it will work better with the baking soda than a light brown sugar will. That's the only difference. Light brown sugar has less molasses than dark brown sugar. So I almost always use them like the same. Like I don't, a recipe says light or dark brown sugar. And for the most part, I'll just like interchange them unless I know that there's like an intention to have more or less molasses flavor. That's the only time that I listen to those recipes. So yeah. But you do want dark brown for this one. If you don't have dark brown, you could just like toss a touch of molasses in with your light brown sugar or even with regular sugar. And that will kind of make up for the fact. Most of the time in the United States, I'm not sure about in other countries, when you buy light or dark brown sugar, most of the time it's just refined sugar. So the white granulated sugar. And then they put molasses in and mix it together. And it's not actually like unrefined sugar. Like it's refined sugar with just molasses added into it. And you can tell the difference if you're ever curious about what you have in your house. If you get like a little handful and run it under the water, if the granules are clear when water is run over them and the molasses washes off, if the granules are clear, then it was refined sugar that just had molasses added back into it. If those granules are still like a caramel kind of tan color, then it's actual like light or dark brown sugar that was like unrefined and kind of unprocessed or less processed, I should say. So yeah. Cool. I'm not sure if that's important or not. I am calling for, in this recipe, I am calling for like a sugar in the raw and not a refined white sugar. And that is for a reason. I'm going to measure these out and get it going, and then I will explain why. Okay, so we need half a cup of our dark brown sugar packed. It's 118 grams. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to turn on my scale. But just so you know, you want a half a cup of packed dark brown sugar for those of you who are using your measuring spoons. Okay, and then 115 grams of the unrefined granulated sugar. What speed did I whip the butter on? A 2 or a 4. Yeah, 2 or 4. Zero that out. And this is 115. Close enough. Okay. I'm just going to give this a quick mix. Kind of for the same reason that I said with the dry goods, is kind of the more uniform it is, the more uniform your cookies will be. Okay. We're going to toss this in just a little at a time. I don't want it to like get hit back into my face. So we're going to just pour in little by little. Poco a poco. There we go. And I'm going to turn this up to a 4. For those of you who don't know, just as a helpful piece of knowledge, if you are making bread, 4 is the setting for bread for your dough. That is the universal dough setting is 4. So I am using the dark brown sugar specifically to react with my leavening agent, right, with my baking soda. And I am using unrefined sugar for the same reasons. So I've noticed that with a granulated, like a white sugar and a refined sugar, so you get more aeration in your cookies, which allows them to be lighter, but also makes them crispier. And it reacts less because it's so neutral, right? It is a neutral, completely neutralized sugar because they've taken everything out of it and you just have that white sugar. So less leavening, right? Less kind of like puff when you're baking with your baking soda or your baking powder or whatever else. So I used both of them when I was testing this recipe, and the white sugar Snickerdoodles, they spread more and they were crispier, and the unrefined sugar were higher, less spread, and were chewier. And so that's kind of why I stuck with that specific ingredient. I did write down here for anybody. Let's do it. Okay, if you're doing a white sugar instead of the unrefined sugar, so if you're doing a refined sugar versus the unrefined sugar, then you need to add in a half a teaspoon of baking powder. So right now we're using just baking soda. You do need to have baking powder because you need to have that secondary reaction with the heat. I'm gonna turn this off. You need to have a secondary reaction with the heat from the oven in order to get that extra oomph of leavening that you're going to lose when you're using a neutral sugar, okay? And then I also do suggest that you reduce the salt to just 1 teaspoon instead of the, did I say sugar? Salt. Salt to 1 teaspoon instead of the half of a tablespoon. A half a tablespoon is a teaspoon and a half. If anybody is wondering, for our measuring cups and spoons people, we have 1 teaspoon, 1.5 teaspoons equals a half a tablespoon. So you're basically just taking a half of a teaspoon out of your salt amount. And that's basically just because the refined sugar has no flavor. It's really clean, right? And so that salt comes through way more than it does when you were using the unrefined sugar. So that's why I lessened the salt in that a little bit. So if that's helpful to anybody who is making this at a later date, if you do not want to go out and you're like, I keep white sugar in my pantry at all times, I don't want to go out and buy another ingredient. This cookie is possible. This cookie is possible with that sugar. You just have to mess around with it a little bit to get it to work. Okay. This is about where I want it to be. before I start adding in my other ingredients. So essentially what I'm looking for, let's see. I'll stop it now. It's almost where I want it to be. I've got a little bit too much. The granules are just not smooth enough yet, but I am getting a lot of the extra aeration, the extra volume and stuff like kind of put into this. So it is starting to look a little bit like a kind of a whipped cream, but like super, super granulated. And so I want this to just be a little bit smoother, just a touch. And you have to, kind of one of the things about cookies is you do a lot of mixing on the front end with the butter and the sugar. And even the eggs, like you do a lot of mixing, getting all of those things incorporated. And then once you add the dry ingredients, it's like, once you don't see any more flour and it's hydrated in, you're done. Don't mix it anymore. Because once those dry ingredients go in, the more you mix, the denser the cookie gets and the harder the cookie gets when you're baking it, and it's not fun. All right, this is almost there. And I can see like how much, let's do this too. Okay, I'll show you guys this too. I can see, another thing you should be doing also is every time you're going to add a new ingredient, you should be scraping down the sides of your bowl so everything is in the bottom of the bowl, again, for better incorporation. But let me just show you this right now because the top here, it has not been incorporated and the bottom has. So you can see the difference between here and here. It's even a different color. So I've got really, really like kind of thicker crystals here that haven't dissolved as much into the butter. And then down here, you can see how much air has been whipped into this and how like the difference in the gradient between the two. So actually I'm going to do this real quick. I'm going to knock the sides down just a touch. Okay. There we go. And this is going to be ready in about 30 seconds to start adding in our eggs. We're going to be adding 1 egg and 1 egg yolk. And I will explain why I did that too in just a second. All right, so now I'm going to lower this all the way down to a 1. For those of you who are cooking with me. Okay, and you're going to do 1. These are large eggs, if that's helpful. In the United States, that's between 50 and 55 grams per egg for what's inside the egg, not like plus the shell. And you're going to do an egg and an egg yolk. Which, fun. Okay, so I'm going to just do this over a bowl because I don't mind getting my hands dirty. There's my egg yolk. Okay, set that off to the side. What? Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll have okay, so I have a question from someone that says, when putting baking ingredients in airtight containers, is there any ingredient that you leave in the original box bag and seal the whole thing into an airtight container? No. Honestly, you can leave anything in its original container. You don't need any of this kind of stuff. This is just because I have ADHD, and if the container isn't see-through, I forget it exists. There's no, you could maybe do that with brown sugar just because it likes to dry out really fast, but I wouldn't say that any of that was really necessary. Your first time hearing what constitutes egg grades? There's an FAQ somewhere on my website that talks about different size eggs. I think it's with the pasta. It's either with gnocchi or with the pappardelle pasta. I have a whole conversation about egg sizes. I want to say it's the pappardelle pasta. I talk a lot about egg sizes because different countries have different egg sizes, depending on what constitutes a large or an extra large or small egg or any of that kind of stuff. And so it can be really confusing. And it used to, specifically for pasta making, it's 60 grams, right? So you do, I think it's like 120 grams per egg or something like that, or 100 grams of flour per one egg. But that was when it used to be 60 grams equaled a large egg. But now that's not the case. And so if you get eggs on the smaller end, which I've gotten like 47 gram eggs in my large, cartons of eggs. And so I'm getting way less egg to flour ratio, and then you get like really dried out pasta. And so it's kind of important, especially in those cases when you've got like such simple ingredients and it's literally just like flour and egg, that you have those ratios correct, or like it's never like you're going to end up with wet or dry. And sometimes, most of the time you end up with a dough that's workable, but sometimes it's just like not good. So yeah, that's what I did is I gave a weight ratio for pasta so that you could just weigh out your ingredients and it would always be correct. Okay, so I'm gonna turn up this a little bit. Essentially what I'm doing now, I'm gonna whip the eggs in until it almost looks like frosting. And once, cause it's gonna look really wet when you first start, and then it's gonna start to kind of whip back up, and those eggs are gonna start to really get in there, and it's gonna start to look like frosting, and that's where I'm gonna stop. And then I'll start adding in the rest of my ingredients, like the vanilla and the salt, and then our dry ingredients, and we'll be good to go. All right, let me show you guys this. So this is where we're at. You can see how much lighter that's gotten. You can see how it looks a lot like frosting. And now I'm ready to add in my vanilla, and I'm ready to add in my salt. I'm gonna just go ahead and bring this down to kind of a lower speed. Okay. Oh, the reason I added in, I should say this. Okay, hold on a second. I'm not done yet. The reason that I do 1 egg and 1 egg yolk instead of just 1 egg or 2 eggs or whatever that looks like, or even a white, right? So that yolk, again, we were talking earlier about added fat and how added fat creates a denser, chewier cookie. And so that was the purpose of that extra yolk. If I have just a single egg in here, then the cookie is lighter and crisper. And once I added in that extra yolk, it gave me a denser, softer cookie. And that is what I was going for. So that was the purpose of that. I know it's kind of annoying to use 2 eggs, but not use the whole other egg, how frustrating that can be, but it actually does serve a purpose, and it is part of the textural component of this cookie. So I swear it's for a reason. Just because I said so, that's why. Oh, I already unscrewed this. Okay, I need, this is the one thing. Here, we're gonna measure our liquid out. I need 10 milliliters, 2 teaspoons of vanilla. Okay. And then I'm going to add in my salt. That is a full tablespoon. That's too much. I want this guy. Add our salt in. And we're adding new ingredients in. Going to scrape down the bowl. Make sure that everything is going to get incorporated correctly. You will notice that this looks so much like frosting at this point. And it's because of all the extra air that we've been whipping in. And the kind of cool thing is you can afford to add this much air in because we've added so much extra protein between the between the milk powder, our toasted milk powder, between the buttermilk powder, and all of our other ingredients that just have protein in them in general, like flour and eggs and stuff like that. Like it's adding so much extra structure that like I can afford to just have this kind of like whip up. Okay. So now we've got all of our wet ingredients. Everything is incorporated. Everything is brought together. And it is time for our dry ingredients. Want to make sure I've got everything. I do. Okay, cool. Love that. Okay. So now we've got our dry ingredients. I'm just going to go again on like a 1. I don't want this flour puffing back out of the bowl. I'm going to just do a little at a time. Once I start seeing it incorporate enough that I can see like tackiness in the dough, I'll add a little bit more flour. This is a thick cookie dough. Let's lock that down before that pops up on me. Okay. And then again, so now I'm done. That's it. I'm going to use my spatula here to help me just do any final mixing and getting the stuff on the very bottom of the bowl incorporated into the cookie dough. But this cookie dough is now done. So you notice like how long all of the previous like whipping in, creaming, like whipping up the butter and then creaming the butter and the sugar and then adding in the eggs, how much time goes into that front section. And like now the dries are added in and it's done. You want it to be as loosely mixed as possible. Now this is, like I said, it's a really thick dough. And that's just because I want these cookies to not spread super wide. You're literally going to be you're going to roll them in a ball and then cover them, right, in your cinnamon and sugar. And I don't want these to be, to like spread out all the way. I want them to be thicker. So there is a higher ratio of flour in these cookies. That is a LEP sticker on the microwave. It is there as an Easter egg. It is there on purpose. Thank you for noticing it. Just trying to get as much of this cookie dough off as I can. Off of my beater here. And now I'm going to go in. I do wish that I had a thicker spatula than this. Do I have one that's a little bit more? I don't. Okay. We're going to use this. Nope, I'm good. It'll still work. I have like different spatulas for different things. This is really good about scraping bowls, but it's not super good because it's super flexible on the tip of it. So it's great for scraping, but it's not great for mixing. In all honesty, I could just use a bowl, or not a bowl, a spoon, but we're already here. This is what I'm doing. How are my people doing that are cooking with me live? Are we good? Are we feeling good about our cookies? So I'm basically just kind of scooping around under, pulling the whole dough ball over, and then giving it a little bit of a press, making sure that all those ingredients incorporate and become hydrated. So this is basically done. Doing good. Your arms are getting tired. Oh no. Do you have a hand? Are you using a hand mixer? Or just mixing with like a fork or something? Your arms have to be tired. If you're doing this whole thing by hand, your arms got to be tired. Okay. This is done. Okay, so I've got my dough here. We're going to scoop it out. You can, at this point, you can turn on your oven. Okay. It is just turned on. We're not doing like a forced fan or any of that kind of stuff. We don't need convection. So you're going to turn that up to 375 Fahrenheit or 190 degrees Celsius and start preheating. This recipe was meant for a number 24 cookie scoop, okay, a number 24 cookie scoop is about 2.5 tablespoons worth of cookie dough, or 45 to 50 grams worth of cookie. So if you do not have a cookie scoop in this size, that is a-okay. You can just use a spoon and you can essentially do this. And just kind of make your cookies to the correct amount. There we go. Hey, a cookie, okay? So you are going to be hand rolling these. I tend to just kind of scoop them out onto a tray and then I'll roll them, which I'm about to do right now. You didn't realize you needed cookie scoops until now. Oh no, do you have a kitchen scale? Still creaming butter, sugar, regretting professional size stand mixer. I have a commercial stand mixer upstairs, and I do regret it with smaller projects like this. Especially when you have to like get in and scrape off the sides of the bowl and you can't tilt the head back. Oh, I get so frustrated. Okay, so I'm gonna do scoops. A cookie scoop and a melon baller. I don't know if my melon baller is down here. I don't think it is. No, melon ballers are much smaller, much smaller. And a melon baller will typically have, so instead of let me do this. I don't know if you guys can see this now that I've got cookie dough all up in this thing. There's a sweep here that you can see with that helps scoop the dough out. A melon baller typically has it's like here, there's like a little hole that pushes the melons forward instead of sweeping them all the way out. Typically. You could use it as a melon baller, but it would probably break it. Cookie scoops aren't meant to be used with anything that's like heavy duty. Like I've broken so many cookie scoops, not so many. I've broken 2 because, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. Whoops, my bad. I did actually do this twice before. I was like, you know what? I think I should maybe never do this again. But I did learn a lesson where I chilled my cookie dough and then tried to scoop it and broke the sweep that's on the inside because it's not used to working with such a cold, thick dough. So mistakes were made, but no longer. Now I will pre-scoop if I'm doing any kind of cookie that needs chill time, particularly so that the butter can like really harden and set in the refrigerator. So like a 24-hour or 48-hour long wait for a cookie. I will pre-scoop because trying to scoop after the dough has been sitting and is chilled is terrible. What if you want to just eat the dough raw? Don't do that. That's what I say. Don't do that. Don't do that. Flour is not, so flour and egg are not cooked. And so you should wait until they're cooked before you eat them. That's what should happen. Or you can pre-toast your flour and use like a different, like an egg replacement or something like that in order to avoid that and eat as much cookie dough as you want. You have to bake it in the oven. You bake your flour in the oven to toast it. In all honesty, I think I kind of would love to try doing some recipes with toasted flour because I'm kind of wonder if that would taste different. I'm like fully interested in that. Hear that, chat? Do it when no one's looking. Hey. Do not line anything with your pan. Oh, I've got a Silpat down. I have a silicone sheet down. You can also do parchment paper. If you have a silicone mat down, then you might get a little more spread just because it's thicker. If you do parchment paper to line, they won't spread as much and you'll get a crispier bottom of your cookie because the heat, it's not as thick and the heat will come through the pan faster. Something to keep in mind when you're preheating, you want to have your oven going for like 30 minutes before something goes into it. If you don't do that, ovens tend to have this like kind of like weird roller coaster situation. So like it'll come to temp and then an oven will kind of decrease, sometimes drastically, like depending on the oven and its age and all that kind of stuff, will decrease and then work itself back up to temperature while your things are baking. And it's not a constant temperature. So which, in order to avoid that like little bit of roller coaster right at the very beginning of an oven preheating, you want to like have it sit there for at least 15 minutes at that initial temperature before you're doing any kind of baking or any kind of cooking in it. Like it should definitely be preheated. Like there's a reason we say preheat. Like you don't just put your cookies into an oven that like you're like, oh, put it to temperature and then like put it in a cold oven and just like let it come up. Like that's not gonna do anybody any favors. But yeah, you wanna have your oven preheating for quite a long time before you do anything that requires like specific temperatures and roasting numbers, roasting temperatures, whatever I'm doing. All right. I may not have enough for a final cookie. I do, you can make these cookies smaller. They will bake a little bit differently. They'll be a little less chewy. And obviously it'll take less time to bake. But not like as less as you think. There you go. We're going to do that. I'll wash my hands real quick because now I've got cookie dough on them. Oven temps aren't a concern when you cook in a microwave. Okay, hear me out. I use different power levels in my microwave, so I even worry about temperatures in my microwave. Oh man. Yeah, I do I have essentially like when I'm reheating bread, I will do like a power level 10, like a really low one, and go in like 15-minute or 15-second increments. And then I do certain things that are like, if it's like beverage or soup or something like that, like I do different settings for different things. Because a microwave is heating up the water molecules and whatever you're bringing back to temperature. And if they overheat, then especially something like bread in particular, and then anything that's like dairy will separate and break. So like dairy will curdle and break. Sauces and things like that have dairy in them or anything like that. That's not good to like bring up to a really high temperature fast. It's like a low and slow on your stovetop kind of thing. And then bread is kind of the same thing. It's like if you heat those water molecules too quickly, then it gets stale and hard. And so I do things at lower temperatures. It's fine. Any opportunity to cook and I'm doing it. Like I am the only one in every job that I've ever worked in. I was the only one that ever like opened the door, even here, like opening the door and like reading all of the instructions on the microwave for like what reheating settings are and how to use it. Like that's me. Okay, these are now done. They are going to go into a refrigerator for about 20 minutes. I am going to cover them because I don't want them to, I know they're only in there for 20 minutes, but I don't want them to dry out. So part of this process is getting the cinnamon and sugar to stick to the outside of these guys, and that's really kind of hard to do. Come on. So I'm gonna let these guys chill. The people who are cooking with me have time to catch up. If you have any questions, for those of you who are cooking with me, please ask them. Okay. Okay. So these are gonna chill. We're gonna make the what we're rolling our cookies in right now, the cinnamon and sugar mixture. This is kind of honestly, this is the hardest part of this whole recipe, is the cinnamon and sugar topping, because cinnamon is, okay, cinnamon is hygroscopic and it pushes moisture away. And so it's like once the cinnamon sticks to the outside of the cookie, it's hard to get the sugar to stick to it as well. Because now there's not any tackiness, because the cinnamon has coated the cookie. And so you have to be like really quick and methodical about how you are coating the cookies in order to get them to coat correctly. So I do prefer to use a kind of wider based bowl. So if you have, like, instead of using something that's really tall like this, because I'll roll my cookies around stuff, anything that's like one of those like soup pasta kind of bowls, right? Something that's like a little wider is a better option. I guess this one here is a pasta bowl. I'll pull it out real quick. So like that was a kind of wide bowl. Your pasta bowls are even wider, are a good option when it comes to rolling these. When I'm doing something like a chicken parmesan or whatever, and I've got like breading, I like to have like kind of steeper sides so that I can kind of get everything kind of folded over the top of it. But because this is so hard to get things to stick to it, having the wider and being able to kind of press and roll around, it's just better all around to get that to go well. So I'm gonna put this in the refrigerator too. Get this egg white back in the fridge. And now we're gonna grab, again, our unrefined sugar. I did notice that the unrefined sugar, the granules are larger than the white sugar. And so you get a little bit of kind of a crust where you have like little granules of sugar on the outside of the cookie, which I particularly liked. And it stuck a little bit better. You can use the refined, like the white sugar though. If it's what you have in your house, you can absolutely use it. This just worked better for me. And since it was already in the recipe, I just kind of stuck with it on the outside. I did try brown sugar because I was like, this doesn't stick very well with the cinnamon. I was getting frustrated and I was like, brown sugar, it's sticky. It looks terrible. It tastes fine, but it looks absolutely terrible on the outside of a cookie. So yeah. Okay, so we are going to be using sugar tapping. Let's do this. We've got a tablespoon, or about 8 grams, okay, of our ground cinnamon. I did have the tablespoon over here. And then we are going to be doing a 1/4 cup, or about 77 grams of our unrefined granulated sugar. That is going to get mixed together, and then we're going to use that to press into the cookies. On a note for cinnamon, I do prefer getting a Ceylon cinnamon. You might also see it as like Saigon cinnamon, but American cinnamon is not as strong and it doesn't taste as good. And so this is what you want to get, is you want to get cinnamon that's from Ceylon, like comes from Ceylon, not, how do I say this? It's Ceylon. It is the literal like plant. And you want Ceylon cinnamon if you can find it. But you might also see it listed out as like Saigon cinnamon or something like that. Or Vietnamese cinnamon is another one that you might see as its title. And that's just kind of like a where it's from, but it's actually made from Ceylon, Ceylon. So yeah. Surprisingly, Costco does sell, I think it says Vietnamese cinnamon on the outside of it. I don't remember. But you can get it from Costco. I don't know if the cinnamons at like my local grocery stores, I don't know which type they are. They don't say it. Typically, I will have to go to like a spice shop or something like that to get those specific types of cinnamons and get like the kind of more pungent one. But Costco does sell it. Dough is I was one of the people that are cooking with me today said the dough is delicious. Don't ask me how I know. No. I don't know if Publix sells the right cinnamon. I'm not sure. And I don't have a Publix anymore. We moved to Colorado and they don't have Publix here. So I can't go in and confirm it for you either. Because I'd be like, on my next trip, I'll let you know if they have it, but I can't even go to find out for you. Okay. Let's do our 77 grams of flour. This is not an exact science either, to be frank. It's just a topping. This is just the ratio that like worked well for me, but you don't have to stick exactly to it. If you want to do just sugar, you can. If you want to do just cinnamon and not have sugar, you can. It's whatever you want it to be. Okay. Next time you go, you'll look. Okay, cool. Let us know if you find like what kind of cinnamons they have. I can't imagine that they don't like that a nicer organic whatever brand that they have at the store doesn't have like a specifically like a Vietnamese cinnamon or something like that, or it doesn't say true Ceylon or something like that on the outside of it. Because a lot of the times it'll do that too, where it's like true Ceylon. It's on the Publix website, so you can order it. Okay, so there you go. They do sell it at a minimum. You can order it online even if it's not in store. Okay, I did use that. Okay, we used a measuring spoon. Yay! Okay, and then I've got my whisk back. Ugh, that is a terrible noise. I'm gonna try to be gentle with that because that sounds awful. Okay, we're going to use our hands because I can't stand that sound. Okay. Get it really good and mixed. Oh, you should definitely make it 0. If they're your wife's favorite, you should be making her cookies. Screw flowers, make cookies. Come on. I want that on a t-shirt. Get me a bumper sticker. Okay. Is there anything, I'm trying to think if there's anything else that we can chat about while our cookies are chilling. I can probably take them out a little bit sooner. These can be, let me say this too. These can be cooked as drop cookies. Like you can literally scoop it out, cover it in some of the cinnamon sugar and stick it right into the oven. They will spread thinner, right? Because we haven't chilled them. So that butter hasn't hardened up a little bit. So you can, like they will be thinner. They will be slightly crispier, but they're still good cookies. So if you don't have the time to sit and chill them for 20 minutes, that's fine. I did do timed chillings on these when I was testing it. So I did a like right from the bowl, immediately put it in its cinnamon sugar, baked it in the oven. I did a 20-minute chill and I did a 2-hour, a 6-hour, an 8-hour, and a 24-hour chill. After 2 hours, they're the same. Like it doesn't matter. Between 20 minutes and 2 hours, the dough is a little bit more hydrated. They were a little bit softer if you wait 2 hours to coat them and then put them in the oven. But the 20 minutes was like a perfect sweet spot. I don't think there was enough difference between 20 minutes and 2 hours for you to really wait that long. But if you're like, I'll just make the dough, put it in the refrigerator, and then come back to it when I get off work or after I take the kids to a birthday party or whatever that looks like. And you need that time, know that you can take that time. And you can leave them in the refrigerator for up to like 48 hours before the dough starts getting just like a little too dried out in your refrigerator, and they're just not going to spread as well. Trying to think. Is there anything else? I am going to show you how to roll and try to get the cinnamon sugar topping on the outside. I have yet to come up with something that like works 100% of the time perfectly. It's just is what it is. Especially after they come out of a refrigerator, they kind of lose a little bit of their tackiness on the outside, and so you have to kind of roll and shape them, get them warmed up with your hands. And then when they're like a little sticky, you can kind of do the outer coating. But it can, you'll see it when you go to do this. It is honestly the most frustrating part of a Snickerdoodle cookie. And I honestly just want to cook it without the outside topping, but it does make them better. And so like, I'm kind of resigned to have to do it. But the shake and bake method is not going to work. I can show you guys that it won't work too. Actually, we can do a little experiment here. The cinnamon, what's going to happen, my hypothesis is that the cinnamon is going to coat it, whoop, and then we're going to lose the sugar. Once the cinnamon gets stuck to the surface of the cookie, it prevents the sugar from sticking. And so if we shake it, that cinnamon's going to stick and the sugar will not. Roll them before you put them in the fridge to chill. You could, but there is when you start moving them from baking tray and moving them around, some of the sugar will knock off of it. And so I found that it's just kind of one of those things that if I can get it coated, put it directly on the pan that goes right into the oven all in one go, that I lose less sugar. Honestly, the sugar is the problem. So if anybody, I honestly, I feel like I need to go around to other people's recipes and like see if I can find what somebody else has done. Everybody does the same thing. They just say roll it in cinnamon and sugar, and I'm like, okay, bet, but like, how am I gonna do this? So yeah, you find a bonding agent. I will say this. I have in the past rolled it, and if too much cinnamon stuck to it and the sugar stopped sticking to it, I have put it underneath the water and then kind of rolled it around in my hands a little bit to get it tacky again and then stuck it right back in. But that also starts to look a little bit like brown sugar, and you'll get like really thick patches, and it gets like flaky. Instead of it just kind of looking like a nice little kind of coating, it like gets flaky and weird. I have pre-baked cookies down here. Like I said earlier, I don't have an oven down here, and so I had to bake some kind of beforehand so that I could be like, and these are what they look like. I think I have one upstairs that I did that like water method thing with it, and it like was okay. But okay, I know this wasn't 20 minutes, but we're gonna still do it. They're chilled, kind of. Like I said, they can go right from, if you don't want to wait, they can go right from the bowl. So this isn't too big of a difference, I guess. Let's do this. Okay. So we've got our cookie. We're kind of just gonna roll it into a ball and get it warmed up. You'll feel it start to get a little tacky. And once it's a little tacky, what you're going to do, okay, so you got our very well mixed situation here. You're going to go right in, and you're kind of going to press it, and then you're going to roll around like this until you've hit all the sides. And then that's it. And stop. Don't roll anymore. You're done. It's done. And you got to stop what you're doing. And I don't have a plate that I can put this on. Actually, we'll do this. I'll bring the pre-baked cookies here, and I'll just move these around. Oh, here, I did the water one on this. You can see how it like a lot stuck, and then it kind of gets like a shaggy look to it instead of this like really pretty kind of situation. But that's it. That's done. Okay. I'm going to do a couple of these wrong so that we can all see kind of how that works and like what to do if we mess up or if it like stops sticking. And then like, I don't want anybody to get frustrated because I know that this is probably like, it can be a frustrating process. Okay. So we've got our tacky cookie here, right? And so if I'm just doing this and I'm rolling it and I'm putting it on top and I'm doing this and whatever, and then like you get the difference, right, between the two. So you see how much sugar is on that and how it's even like almost a different color. You can see there's more cinnamon on this guy than there is on this guy. Once the cinnamon starts sticking to the outside of the cookie, it knocks all the sugar off and then the sugar doesn't stick. So like if I was like, oh crap, and I like started trying to press, like no, like it's like less and less. Every time you pull it up, there's like less sugar on it. So what I would do in this situation is I would probably like put it in my hand and try to get it tacky again and try to work through that. It's so frustrating. But like see how little is on? Like it just comes right off of it. But this is where that whole water thing kind of came into play. And I can give this as an option to do this, but I feel like it has to be done a specific way. And even then, like it's not as good as the very first roll through. The first roll through is always the best one. Anything after that. So okay, something that I was thinking, how do they stick sugar to donuts? It's warm. The donuts are warm, so it sticks to them because it'll melt and stick. Melted butter, I was thinking melted butter or even like honey or like a syrup of some kind, like if you did like a really light coating of syrup. The problem with that though is that when they go to bake, because now you have to bake them for 10 minutes, is they may burn. And so we also don't want that to happen. So yeah. Yeah, we don't want the extra sugar or things that can brown or crisp or whatever. Butter may be an option. But I would not put sugar like a syrup. I was thinking about that. That did cross my mind. I would not do a syrup though, because a syrup is sugar. It will caramelize. It will burn in the oven because it's on the outside of the cookie. Okay, so we're gonna take this over here, and I'm just gonna get it a little wet. Now remember how I said that that cinnamon is hygroscopic. So when you put this, if you could put it like right under the water and it won't look like any water stuck there or any water stuck to the cookie, even though you put it underwater because it's got cinnamon on it. So you still have to have it in your hand and you have to roll it around until again, you can feel that tackiness kind of start to show and you want it to dry out. You don't want it to be like super, super wet. You want it to just be like a little tacky, which this is definitely becoming tacky. Okay. And then you're going to have to do a really fast roll because now it's tacky and wet and a lot of sugar is going to stick to it. And so you have to like do it really fast. Okay. And that brings us basically back to the same place. You're going to have more cinnamon on this guy and more sugar on this guy. So just be prepared that like, this is the difference. Where did it go? So like you might have something, I don't know what the camera is on. I think it's on the whole section here. You might have something closer to this if you're doing this guy versus this with your first roll. Okay. So now you guys can see kind of what's going on. It may be somewhere in between this. I'm not really sure kind of like what that will end up looking like for you. But like the first roll is always the best one. You just have to like be ready to do it. When using milk powder, do you reduce the amount of flour also? No, you don't. You do not. You can literally add powdered milk. You can add up to 2 tablespoons of powdered milk to almost any dough, and it won't make a difference. It won't make a difference at all. Okay. Got some wet pieces of sugar in here now. Okay, so hopefully that was helpful. I am not going to bake these during this cooking stream, something. So for those of you who are cooking with me today, I've basically gone as far as I'm going to go, right? So we've done like, here are our scoops. Here's how we get everything coated. It goes in the oven. Of note, okay, important of note, you have your oven preheating at 375, okay, or 190. When you put your cookies in, you are going to reduce that temperature to 350. If you are below 5,000 feet, sorry, I don't know what the metric of that is. You're going to reduce it to 350 or 177 degrees Celsius, okay? And that is what you're going to bake it on. The purpose of that, the higher the temperature, okay, it's going to spread less. So you get a thicker cookie, okay? If you start at a low temperature and just bake it, it will spread slightly more. Is it so much more that like we can wildly tell a difference and like the cookie is so much different? Not really, but it is going to be the texture and consistency that I prefer, which is why I did it that way. I tend to do that with a lot of my baking because it creates just a nice kind of, I don't like the word film here, but that's what I'm going to go with because I can't think of another word. But it creates almost like a crust or kind of like a film on the top that prevents more spread from happening. And that's with any baked goods. So even breads and things like that, I'll start at a higher temperature, get it in the oven, let it sit there for like a minute or two, and then I'll bring that down. So that way the oven is coming down in temperature to the temperature that I want it to be at. And I have less spread and just like a better overall crust on things than I would otherwise have if I had had it at just like that lower temperature to start with. So that is kind of an important thing. It will bake in the oven for 10 to 12 minutes. 10 minutes is on the lower side of that. 12 minutes is probably my happy medium. Anything over 12 minutes is going to be less soft on the inside and much crispier around your edges. So if that's your preferred style of cookie, then you can kind of give it another minute or so. If you're cooking it directly from the freezer, you're going to add another minute or two onto that top time in order to get that center fully cooked. Let's see. You are looking for, when you are baking these cookies, what you're looking for is a top that is no longer wet looking, right? So you want, not only do you want to see the cookie expand enough that it creates all of these really nice cracks that you're getting in your Snickerdoodle cookies, right? You want it to expand, you want to see those cracks, and then you don't want to see anything really wet going on in the top of this. If you see anything that is not full, that is like not dried out and cooked all the way through, your cookie is not cooked. So if you've got this going in the oven and you've hit your 12 minutes, but they still look like they're a little wet on top, let them go for an extra minute because they're not done yet. And like you'll notice, like these were in the oven for 12 minutes. So like my bottoms are not even, like sometimes cookies, when they're in the oven, the bottoms can get like kind of darker and the edges will get darker and brown around the outside. That's not even happening here, okay? And then I guess lastly, we should probably give you guys like a little display, I guess, of what this looks like. So you'll see that it's chewy, okay? So there's just like a little bit of added moisture, okay? So they're dense, they're chewy on the inside. There's a little, just a touch of crust kind of on the outside and the top because of that high original temperature. But they're just nice, good, chewy cookies. Like I almost feel like these are, like if you were going to do a ginger molasses cookie, they're really similar in texture to a ginger molasses cookie, just slightly crispier around just the outside, but that center is basically the same. You should let these cool. For those of you who are saying to eat them right out of the oven, because they don't have a ton of structural integrity when they come right out of the oven. You only had, wait, hold on, someone who's cooking with me. You had 7 grams of cinnamon left. That's fine. That's good. You just made it. You made it. You're good. It's okay. There's not a ton of structural integrity going on in these cookies until they've cooled down enough. So I do not recommend eating them right out of the oven. Let them chill on your countertop and come to temperature for at least, okay, I'll give you 5 minutes. I say 10 minutes in the recipe, at least 5 minutes. Let them like become an actual cookie instead of just like puffed up cake. Like let it settle a little bit. Yeah, third degree burns and first place taste, right? All structural integrity those cookies right into my mouth. Okay. Okay, people. I think we've come to an end. I guess the only thing that we did not cover that I have as a note for myself to cover is if you do like cream of tartar and you do want to use that in these cookies, I understand. It's not my cup of tea, but if you don't want to use the buttermilk powder as its flavor, as the cookie flavoring, and you want to use cream of tartar and go like the traditional route, just substitute it. So instead of the 9 grams, which is, oh God, I know the grams, I don't know a tablespoon. Instead of the tablespoon or 9 grams of buttermilk powder, you're going to use a single teaspoon, okay, cream of tartar, which is 2.5 grams. No, what do I have? For the buttermilk. You're going to a teaspoon of cream of tartar for the buttermilk powder. And I do not seem to have written down what that is in grams. So that's fun. I'll look it up for you guys real quick because I know I've got it on the website somewhere around here. 3.2 grams. So if you do not want to use buttermilk powder, you want to stick to cream of tartar and go traditional route, instead of using the buttermilk powder, you're going to use a single teaspoon or 3.2 grams of the cream of tartar. Okay, cool. Cream of tartar belongs in invert sugar. I honestly, yeah, I don't put it in a lot of things. Do I have a red velvet recipe? I don't. I don't have a red velvet recipe for a cake or a cookie. Homemade Play-Doh for cream of tartar? Interesting. Okay. For those of you who are cooking with me, how are you feeling? Do you feel like you're at a good place? Do you want me to stay longer with you? Where are you on all this? All this stuff. Because I know that I'm not actively baking with you guys since my oven is upstairs. And I know I didn't like roll all the cookies. I guess I could just be like, continue rolling cookies so I have something to do. We'll do another couple examples. Why not? And basically, like I said before, just letting my hands warm up the outside of the cookie dough and get it a little tacky. Okay, your cookies are chilling. You just need to coat and bake so you feel good. Okay, good. What I will do is I'll like do an outro. Okay, I'll do an outro for this video on YouTube. We'll say goodbye to anybody who found me at a later date. I'll do my whole spiel, and then I'll stay a little bit longer for the people who are going to be rolling, just in case you guys need a little extra help with that. You'll probably sprinkle a little extra cinnamon and sugar on the top of each cookie too. Honestly, that's a great idea. Okay, so I've got this tacky, and again, this is why I like to have this wide bowl. We're gonna go straight down. We're gonna go around the bottom, up to the sides, and over to the top, all in one go. And there you have it, okay? The more you roll, the less sugar you're gonna get on your cookie. We don't want that to happen. I'll do one more. We'll go through the process. Okay. Same thing. Okay, so we're gonna right flat down, roll up to the sides, over to the other side, and to the top. And there you go. Okay. Just be methodical about it. Try not to roll over the same surface twice, which is kind of the point of having that kind of wide bowl that you can kind of take it all the way from bottom to top in a circle without having to like go back over something. Because the second you start going back over, that's when like the sugar starts coming off, more cinnamon starts getting stuck to it, and then you have that problem. Oh, let's do somebody wanted to see a shake and bake cookie. We'll do it with the little guy. If this works, honestly, I'll put it on the website if it works. I'm not sure it will, but I theorize that it won't. But we can see. Okay. Plop it in. Let's do an experiment live. Okay. We'll do a quick shake. And no sugar. A little bit of sugar on the bottom, but basically no sugar. Yeah, I don't know. It's unfortunate, but it is what it is. I'm covered in cinnamon. If it were it so easy, everybody would tell you to do it. It's not, unfortunately. Okay, I guess let's do outro. Are we good to do an outro, honey? Okie dokie. Move the little stuff out of the way. Clean up my space just a touch. Okay. I'm gonna eat another piece of cookie real quick. Maybe silly, but could you run the sugar through a spice mill to try to make it as fine as the cinnamon? But then you don't get the crust. So like the point of both of them, right, is you get the cinnamon flavor, right? Because thus far, it's, for a lot of people, it's essentially a sugar cookie, right? It's a sugar cookie with some kind of tangy ingredient. In our case, we also have the toasted milk powder, so we get like a brown butter flavor in it. So you've got this base cookie, and without the cinnamon, you don't get that extra flavor, right? So you need to have the cinnamon. And then the sugar topping is not for flavor, it's for texture. And so if we mill down and do, I mean, it's basically like if we were going to do like a powdered sugar, right? So if you did like a super fine sugar or a powdered sugar or something like that, then you don't get that crispy crust on the outside when you bake it, because that sugar is just going to dissolve with the liquid that comes up with the cookie as it melts and then starts to bake in your oven. And so you lose that. If you wanted to do just cinnamon, you could do just cinnamon, but then you don't get all those like kind of crackly little pieces of sugar, unfortunately. Tangy ingredient? No, like buttermilk powder or cream of tartar is kind of what I was going for with that. Yeah. These store well for about 4 days in the counter before they start like drying out. If you put them in an airtight container, you can see them here. You can stack them. I know some cookies are not good being stacked. These ones are good being stacked. Because they're not underbaked, they don't like bend and get all weird in a container when you stack them, which is nice. So yeah, just put them in an airtight container. Do make sure that they cool all the way down before you put them in an airtight container, or they're going to steam in your container and there'll be a lot of moisture in there, and we kind of don't want that. So let them cool all the way down. You can keep them on the counter for about 4 days. If you want to freeze them, you can freeze them like pre-baked, all baked and everything. For about a month, you can keep them in your freezer before they'll start getting a little weird. And those can just come back to temperature in a refrigerator, on a countertop. If you feel like putting them in a low oven or a microwave, you can. I know we talked a little bit about microwaving stuff earlier. Use a bread setting if you have one, or a low power setting at smaller increments, like 15-second increments, to reheat them if you're taking them right from the freezer. And then if you want to freeze these guys, remember, I would honestly say to freeze them, just these dough balls like this, and then bring them up to temperature and do the coating when you go to bake them. Okay, so I know we had somebody ask earlier if we could just kind of pre-coat and then like stick them in the refrigerator, let them chill, and kind of go back and forth. But if the sugar again is gonna get like knocked off, especially if you can't keep like a tray covered in your freezer for forever, right? You're gonna freeze them flat, not touching, and then take them and put them into a baggie and then take them out as you want them because they've been individually frozen, which means they're gonna be knocking against each other and that sugar is not gonna stay on them. So I would tell you to freeze these after. You don't have to chill them. You can scoop them. You can roll them into kind of a thing, stick them on a baking tray, roll them into a ball, stick them on a baking tray with not touching, and just freeze them, and then toss those into a baggie. Cook them when you want to bake them, when you feel like having a cookie. But you're going to take those out, and you're going to let the outside at least get tacky. Put the topping on, and then put it into the oven. If it's still frozen in the center, make sure you add the extra time to baking. If you let them defrost all the way through before you add the topping and then bake them, you can bake them for the same amount of time. But they can stay frozen if they're unbaked for about 3 months before they start being weird. Do note that if you are baking from frozen or baking from chilled for over 24 hours, they're also going to spread less because everything is super, super cold when it goes into your oven. So it has less time to spread before you've created that crust on the outside of it. So they may be a little bit thicker as well if you are baking from frozen or if you're baking from chilled for like longer than a day. So just keep that in mind. Okay. I'm going to say adieu to you guys. Thank you for joining me today in the A Little Spoon Kitchen. I hope that everything that we've talked about, from all of the ingredients and why I've added them to this cookie, Snickerdoodles in general, getting the toppings and all that kind of stuff on, kind of just going through all of the steps and the processes for this guy, have helped you. I do hope you guys have some fantastic cookies in the future, and I hope that these are included in those, especially with all of your Christmas baking or your holiday baking. It's a wonderful time to use your oven without making your house be so hot. Baking is the best time of the year for baking. So I hope you guys enjoy these. You can find me if you're looking for some of my other stuff. I have several places that you can find me. Obviously, you can look at other videos I have here on YouTube. If you have found this video at a later date, you can kind of go up through my playlists and see that I have several more of these videos. I do also have a website at alittlespoon.com. Got plenty of stuff going on there. Obviously, more so than all of the cook-alongs that we have done on YouTube. I've got plenty more recipes that are on that website. I do like to do something similar to how this cook-along was. There's a lot of FAQs on my recipes that explain like why I did something, or if you needed to substitute, what would that look like, for common questions, common things that people would want to substitute or use. So there's a lot of reasoning, there's a lot of science, there's a lot of information. If that's something that you're interested in, you can find way more of that on my website. I do also have an Instagram, and it's at @a_little_spoon. I got my name a little too late for no spaces and just having it be one word. So I've got little underscores in there to take care of that. I do have a Patreon. If you'd like to support me, and you don't want to take out of your wallet, just like, comment, be around in all of the things that I'm making online and just kind of partake in the community. It's super, super helpful if you do make a recipe from the website, or even if you're making it from Instagram, because I post all of my recipes to Instagram as well, that you comment and just say what you thought about it, ask questions, all that kind of stuff. Any interaction is super helpful. If you do want to add a little bit of your wallet into this, You can also be a part of my Patreon community. We're a fun group. We have a good time. It connects you to a private Discord server where we talk about food like all the time. And I do a monthly hangout where we kind of just get on and talk about food and talk about what's going on in our lives. It's a good time. And that can be, I guess, as little as $1. They like make you choose. I wanted to just be like any amount that somebody decides, but they make you like make tiers. So I think there's like a dollar, a $5, a $10, and like a $20 a month situation that I've set up there. And you can come and you can join us and you can hang out with us. Or you can support and just like not be involved and just kind of like lurk and see stuff, but not actually talk to us. That's fine too. If you really don't want to talk, like if it makes you nervous to talk to people, that's not a big deal. But any of that is helpful. I have the Patreon specifically because I don't have advertising on my website and I'd like to keep it that way. So that's kind of was the initial main focus of having the Patreon, was to not have to need money from ads. But it's become quite a fun community. And so it's a good time. It's a good place to talk about food. So yeah, I will see you guys next time. Thank you very much for joining us. We do these once a month. It's the first Sunday of every month at 10:30 Mountain Time, 12:30 Eastern. And yeah, it's not always baked goods. Sometimes we do cocktails. Sometimes we do other kinds of dishes, food, like main courses and side dishes and things like that. But it's pretty much always a good time. So thanks for joining us. Bye. I'll see you next time.